Hey guys, can y'all hear me and see me? Somebody give me a thumbs up or a yes, or just let me know that I'm coming through. I'm in a new location, which has been a reoccurring theme lately. We have been traveling a lot. That's why I haven't been on here. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Um, that's why I haven't been on here. We've been on the move. We just got back from West Virginia, where we had been for like the past week, and that was one of the things. Also, there's so much stuff I want to talk about with y'all, but the pictures I posted from the lunatic asylum also brought a book back from there. It's got all kinds of photographs, stories about the people who are in there. It was an amazing tour. I mean, we just a bunch of people did a tour through the place where they take you all through the grounds. And we wanted to do the historic tour. So they told us a lot about, just like the year the place was built, what have you. But it was the more interesting parts were about some of the people that were there and stuff like the reasons that they were there. Like, they said that when the place was first opened up, if a husband decided that he didn't want his wife anymore and he didn't want to go through the trouble of divorcing her, he could just drop her off. He could have her committed to the insane asylum, and no one could get her out but him. If he was the one who had put her in there, if your husband was the one who had put you in the asylum, then you stayed there until he came to get you. And if he didn't come get you, then you just stayed there forever. Well, not only did the woman stay there, but also any kids that she had would also become wards of the asylum. So, it was like if somebody wanted to abandon their family really quickly, that was a easy way to do it. And it happened a lot, they said. And they had an entire wing of this place dedicated to the children's wing. And they said they were declared wards of the state. Like whenever the kids got put in the insane asylum, they declared them wards of the state. And you were put up for adoption. You were officially an orphan. And you were probably going to stay an orphan until you turned 18 and could leave, because most people were not going to come and adopt a kid out of an insane asylum. If they're wanting to adopt a child, they're going to go to some other less horrifying option, maybe. But they said a lot of the kids, once they turned 18, they were eligible to get out, but the vast majority of them chose to stay there. So they had an entire wing. I mean, this prison. I mean, part of it was a prison. Part of the compound was the asylum for the criminally insane. But then they also had, the children's wing. They had the men's wing. They had the violent men's wing, the women's wing. But you could be put in for all kinds of different, reasons. Like even having what's it called that people get now, where they forget Alzheimer's. If you had that, you could end up in there as well. So you had people for all kinds of different reasons, and they told us all these stories, like how I can't remember exactly how many people they said this place held, but it was in the thousands. Thousands of people lived in there. Everything from like the criminally insane to people who had turned 18 years old, as had grown up in the asylum as orphans and had turned 18 and had figured, why leave? This is all I know. This is where I've been my whole life. What's the point in going out there anyway? We're out in the middle of West Virginia. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? West Virginia in the 1700s. At least here, I know I got 3 meals a day coming. So the vast majority of the children, even after they turned 18, chose to live there. So there was a whole wing for them. So you're talking about, thousands of people in this place. And one of the more interesting stories was they said that one time one of the patients somehow or another made his way all the way up into the attic of this place. This place is 4 stories tall, and then you've got the attic on top of that. And the patient escaped up into the attic one time and got a can of turpentine and a box of matches and ended up setting the whole place on fire. They had these really, really narrow escape passages that they were, the hospital was massively overpacked. It held thousands more people than it was ever designed to hold. So if they knew that a fire broke out and there was like a panic, a stampede, then it was going to be chaos. There was just two tiny walkways, one on each end, and it was only wide enough for two people to walk down at a time. And you would have had to have thousands of people trying to shove their way onto these tiny walkways if they knew that they were going to die because this whole place was on fire. They said they all got saved because one woman, one of the nurses there, had an idea, and instead of ringing the fire bell, she started ringing the breakfast bell instead. So they knew they had already had breakfast once, but they figured something's up, and okay, great, we get a second breakfast. So they all lined up orderly and marched off of the rows down to the eating area, and there was no panic, no stampede. And not one single person died. Not one, every single person in the building survived because the woman rang the breakfast bell instead of the fire bell. So all kinds of great stuff like that. It was amazing. If you ever get the chance to go there, it's in West Virginia. And I'm going to read this book. I got this book while it's there. It was bought by a private person. Like one man bought this place for like $1.5 million or something like that after it was shut down in 1994. That was when they officially stopped using it. And most of the people, all those thousands of people that were in there, whenever they stopped using it, they all just got turned out on the street. Thousands of insane people. The only ones, they kept a very, very, the ones that were in one little area that they called the criminally insane, they kept those. Those were the only ones that they did not throw out onto the street. So, and then it closed down in 1994. So the tour guide said that a lot of the people that got, or at least some of the people that got kicked out onto the streets are still alive there now. Like there's some of the homeless population in West Virginia. It's a weird place. If you ever have a chance to go there, I highly recommend it. Like I said, I'm going to read through this book and see what all's in it. And if there's any other stories worth reporting about, they used to do stuff in there like lobotomies. This was horrific stories you would hear in there, how they used to do these lobotomies on people as young as like 4 years old, where they stick ice picks under your eyelid into your brain and wiggle them back and forth to basically separate parts of your brain. After that, you never feel anything again. You feel like touching things, but as far as like happiness, sadness, excitement, fear, you never really had any kind of emotional feeling again. One guy he was 4 years old whenever they did it to him. He was young enough that his brain was actually able to reform its connections, and he eventually became completely normal, completely healed, came back from it. This is why we now know a lot of what it was like for the people that went through this experience, because not only did he come out of it, he was able to write a book about what it was like to have that done to him and to come back out of it. And they said he is now a bus driver somewhere like Ohio or something like that. I can't remember exactly where. Speaking of Ohio, Lori and I both are going to be doing with our friend Jillian. If y'all are familiar with the I don't listen to a lot of true crime stuff, but there's a true crime obsessed podcast. If you do true crime podcasts, you've probably heard of it. I think they're, um, pretty popular amongst the true crime crowd now. Popular enough where they're able to travel around doing tours and putting on like festivals and things like that. Uh, and one of the things I realized whenever we went to Arkansas, I realized like when I was doing art, when I was in the art world, creating paintings and whatnot, one of the things I realized is I didn't like working alone. I never liked doing solo shows. I always wanted to do collaborations with other people, either collaboration shows or collaboration art pieces or whatever it was. But that I didn't really like working alone. And then even one of the things I've come to mostly experience with writing now is I just don't like to work alone in whatever I'm doing. Why am I talking about this? What were we just talking about? This is one of the things. I'm having all sorts of ideas and inspirations and stuff. My brain is also scrambled because, like I said, not only did we come back from West Virginia, but now that I'm back in New Orleans right now, but you can tell this is not my house by the decor behind me. We had to get out of our house because they're doing some construction work. So it's been kind of going through a lot mentally. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, this is what I did magic for. Before I left New York, I was doing ritual work every single day, saying, let me constantly be on the move, going to new places, doing new things, having new experiences. All I want to do with my life is just move and see new places and do magic wherever I go. That was what I'd asked for. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. Even here in New Orleans, I'm in a completely different part of the city from where I live, which is the French Quarter. So getting to experience kind of a completely different kind of life. It's interesting. It's not entirely bad, but it's exhausting getting broken up out of your routine. And that's kind of what's happening for me. One other thing before we start talking about the fixed stars. One of the things that happened in West Virginia was we were visiting some family members there. And my brother-in-law gave me this book that I thought y'all might find interesting. I don't know how widely available this is, or if it's still in print or anything else, because it looks like it's kind of old. Like it's got that used bookstore, kind of that yellowish quality that always reminds me of like when you walk into those stores, the smell you get, all of that. Oh, right. Thank you, Vegas. Thank you. I was talking about Ohio and Jillian and the True Crime podcast. So me, Lori, Jillian, and Bob Ruff. Bob Ruff is another guy, a podcast guy, that's been helping with the investigation on the case and keeping that alive. And he was the one really pushing this DNA thing. And his podcast is called Truth and Justice. So it's going to be, Bob Ruff from Truth and Justice, Jillian from True Crime Obsessed, and me and Lori are all going to be it's called Obsessed Fest in Ohio. See, like I said, I've been doing magic to travel around, do things I've never done before, see things I've never done before. Now, going to Ohio. I joke, but I am actually excited. I was recently in Columbus, Ohio, and it was the first time I'd ever been there. And Ohio is one of those places. The only thing that I knew about Ohio at all was that it was where Michelle Belanger lived. Other than that, I knew nothing about it whatsoever. I had maybe like vague associations of the Drew Carey show or something. But when I went there, I actually really liked it. What I liked was I was in Columbus, which is like a school town, the big college there. And you could just feel a very large amount of life and vitality in the streets. Like people were alive and they were happy, and it was just a lot of life. To me, it was everything that I look for in a city. What I enjoy is being able to look out the window and see foot traffic. I like to see people going back and forth. So that we're going to be doing that. That's what I had forgotten. Obsessed Fest, which I'm actually really excited about. Excited about it because not only is it a chance to bring more eyes to the case, but it's also goofy. It's fun. It's not serious. It's not talking about, not that I'm complaining about this at all, because these are the conversations that I love having and would prefer having, but, not things like, when we're talking about magic, we're talking about like life-changing subjects, stuff that's very close to, I don't know, it's hard to describe. But this is a chance, this is just going to be something that's actually fun to do, as well as being helpful in some way. And that's the kind of thing I want to do more of. That's kind of what I'm doing magic for now. Vegas Says wins that. It is, my brain is so scrambled right now. I know we're doing Joshua Tree at the 1st of September. I don't want to lie, but I don't know. I go to the True Crime Obsessed Instagram page. I know they have posts on there about it, so you can find it on there. Wow, Joe Hawkins is giving us all kinds of Ohio information. Yeah, I really did enjoy it there, and I'm looking forward to getting back. It was one of those places that happens to me every so often. Sometimes I get the exact opposite. There are places we go, and the energy of those places, either it feels completely dead, flat, broken, you feel no inspiration there, there's no movement there, or you find these other places that are the opposite of that just feel like kind of well springs of life. And usually those places catch me off guard. That happened to me when I went to Boulder, Colorado. Denver did too. Not to quite as much an extent. Something about Boulder, I don't know what it was. It just, something about that place, I could just feel life there. And it did. That's where I started to heal. That's what it is. I talk about whenever I got out of prison and I went through a nervous breakdown, 2 of them actually. Boulder is where I started healing and being able to do magic again. That's what it was. There was something about that place that contributed to my well-being. Every single time I have ever been there, something amazing and beautiful has happened or changed in my life in some way. And so now that's what I always connect Boulder to. Like when I first got out of prison, I could not even do magic due to the nervous breakdowns. That changed in Boulder. There's something about the energy there. And for me, for whatever reason, something about Columbus going through there was like that same thing. There was a spark of just like seeing something and kind of wanting to experience more of it, because the thing that those 2 places have in common is that I had never even thought about either one of them. I had no preconceived ideas or connotations or anything else about either one of those places. It was just like a blank slate to me. I had no frame of reference. Trying to think if there's been any more. Something about Houston. Houston was kind of like that. Salem. Anyway, I'm rambling about crazy stuff. Another thing I wanted to tell y'all, this book what I started talking about and then lost my train of thought was given to me by my brother-in-law in West Virginia. And what it is, it's, you know how in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, um, they basically all tell the same story, the story of Jesus's life. But each one like has little details or little changes that the other one doesn't have. So that's why they put all four of them together in one book, because Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are basically all telling the same story, but each one is either giving you slightly different or a little more or a little less information than the others. It's like all four of them together give you a full story. You know, like there's some stories in some of them that aren't in others. Well, what they did with the author of this book, and I'm not sure who this is even. I can't even find an author's name on it. I can't even find an author's name on it. Maybe they wanted it to be completely anonymous. Anyway, what they did is took all four of those gospels and compiled them into one. Like they took all the little stories from each one that aren't in all of them, and they put them all together in one story. So that whenever you read this, you kind of get the full story of all four of those in one book. You know, if you know, we talk, the reason I bring this up is because we talk on here every so often about how most of these biblical stories are, you know, just like entertaining ways of passing on information about celestial phenomena. You know, like Jesus and the 12 disciples being the sun and the 12 constellations of the zodiac, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different information in there. But one of the things that there was one page I wanted to read to you out of here. And this is, I haven't read this whole thing yet. Here we go. I have not read this entire book yet. I just flipped it open at random to this page. It's page 117, chapter 16. I flipped it open to this page at random. And it was because, you know how the reason I bring this up about these biblical stories being crystallizations of information about celestial phenomena. One of those things is the Shem operation. So you know how, like, when you're doing the Shem operation, there are 72 angels. It's the zodiac cut. You know, it's degrees divided, and each of the Shem angels is the personification or the anthropomorphification of 5 degrees of the zodiac. That's what the Shem operation is. 72. There's 72 of them. And this is what you're working with right before you go to the fixed star work. But also you'll notice in we've talked about this before, in ancient Egyptian mythology, they say that when Set went to slay Osiris, he had 72 co-conspirators. And in the Gospel of Luke, in some of the translations, it said that Christ had 72 disciples. You know, we don't always think, most of the time when we think of Jesus and the disciples, we think of 12. That's the most common most common image we'll get. And that's the most common names of the disciples that we know. But in the Gospel of Luke, in one translation, it says that he has 72 disciples. In the book of Abramelin, you know, the book that to most people is synonymous with attaining the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. In there, it says that, I'll mangle this, but it says something about at one point the old magician, goes to take alms to 72 poor people. Those 72 poor people are the angels of the Shem operation. That reminds me of something I was going to tell y'all a while back. No, I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm going to finish this first. Because that's a whole different topic, whole different subject. You can see by the way I'm going crazy that us not being on here all the time has caused all of this energy to build up. So now I have way too many things to talk about at once. So this is the story from the Gospel of Luke, where it's talking about the 72 disciples. In this one, instead of 72, they say 70. For whatever reason, that's the translation they went, whether that's the way they chose to translate it, as 70 instead of in the other versions, which gives 72. So I'm going to read this. It's like 3 paragraphs. These things behind him, Jesus commissioned 70 of his disciples and sent them ahead in pairs to each of the towns he planned to visit. What a harvest there is out there, he told them. Pray and ask the Lord of the harvest to send help. He gave them essentially the same instructions he had given the apostles when he first sent them out. When the 70 got back, they reported on what had happened to them, exultant over the fact that, as they said, when we speak in your name, even the devils do what we tell them. Jesus listened and then said, I recall seeing Satan falling as a bolt of lightning flashes from the sky to the earth. Yes, I have given you power, the power to walk among snakes and scorpions and be immune to their venom and immune too to the worst the enemy can do to you. But don't let the fact that you have power over evil spirits carry you away. It is far more important that your names have been inscribed in heaven. See what I mean? It's pretty good. But all of that, you know, he's saying, you know, normally whenever we think of these things, whenever we think of these angels, like whatever books you read on them that are out there, like the Angels of the Shem operation, whenever you read these things, most of what you come across is stuff about invoking them one at a time in order to get something specific. You know, like invoke this particular angel for riches or for information about this or for development in this way, whatever it is. It's all about invoking one angel for a particular purpose. Most of the stuff that's out there now does not talk about, you know, doing it. Like, for example, it's displayed in the Athanasius-Kircher diagram of it almost looks like a pie chart where the magician is standing in the middle of the circle and you see all the 72 angel names around him, where he's invoking them exactly like he's doing whenever he's doing the lesser invoking ritual or the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram. Only in this case, he's got 72 angels around him instead of 4. That's what Athanasius-Kircher drew. I would show it to you if I were at home, but I don't have it with me. But I've shown it to y'all a lot on here. You know, a lot. You've probably seen it so much you're sick of it. Yeah, that same for me, Thomas. Thomas says that's one of the most beautiful pieces of ritual I've ever seen in art. For me, it was absolutely life-changing. That was one of the things that made everything click into place for me. And I realized that everything that you had been learning is a formula or a pattern. It was seeing that Kircher diagram. That was what made everything snap into place and made me understand that I was on the right track. You know, like I always say, I don't have anything new to contribute to magic. The masters, whether it's the masters of the past or the masters of the present, you know, when we're talking about people all from like, whether it's Crowley to Cornelius Agrippa, whoever it is, these people have said all of this far more eloquently and more thoroughly and with more knowledge on the subject than I probably will ever have. There's nothing that most, there's nothing else to add to this body of knowledge that hasn't already been covered by someone, except our own personal stories. That's what each of us brings to this. It's the masters are the ones who kept us alive. Whether you're talking, people like Falconelli, whoever, all of those names that you think of when you think of like old school, really old school magic, even back before the Golden Dawn. What I've always tried to do is simplify this, because that's what I had wished I had found somebody to do for me. And in some ways, in some small ways I did, like, coming across Donald Michael Craig's stuff. So that's basically what I'm trying to do, is make it simple enough for other people to not take as much time flailing around and having to figure this out through trial and error like I did. Because that's basically what I did when I was in a prison cell. I had to figure a lot of this out through trial and error. And it was only like after I figured it out, I would always receive some sign that it had been right. And for me, that's what that Athanasius Kircher diagram had been. When I first started doing the LBRP and the lesser invoking, next thing I started to think, and this is one of the reasons that I say that a lot of times I think ex-addicts make the best magicians, because they get addicted to magic. I started to think, and this is addict thinking. It really is when you think this out, but think of as, if 4 angels are good, then 14 are even better. That's going to make you develop even faster. It's that more feeling, craving. You get addicted to magic. You get addicted to the changes you start to experience in yourself. Some people do. It's all over the map, honestly. I've seen some people that have just kind of a slow, even approach. Other people try it out and decide it's not for them at all. But the ones who go the furthest tend to have like those addictive personalities. So LVX, this is a good question, and this gets us into a good place in this to get into the fixed star stuff. LVX is saying, should you wait till after the planetary work to start using the Tree of Life angels in the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram? The way that I did it, personally, here's what I mean. What got me off on that whole big spiel we were just doing is the only thing we really have to contribute is our own personal aspects, our own personal stories when it comes to magic, the things we learn through trial and error. And that was what what I started doing. There's nothing you're going to find that's going to tell you to do it this way. This is just my own personal experiences. Just like when we were designing those talismans, there was nothing that says a talisman has to look like those talismans that I was showing you. That's just the way that I started making mine when I was in prison. Other people's may look absolutely nothing like mine whatsoever. All of this is about how, like, trying to pass on how I did it if you want to achieve the same results. What I did, think of it first this way, as what the spheres on the Tree of Life kind of are the planetary energies, but in a higher form, in a purer, more divine form. Tippereth is a higher, purer, more divine form of the sun. When you're talking about planetary energies, you're talking about energies that have both positive and negative aspects to them. This is the stories about the seven deadly sins and the seven virtues. Each planetary energy has both a vice and a virtue associated with it. The spheres on the tree of life are those same planetary energies, but on a much more purified level. All of the vice with none of the virtue, or less of the, all of the virtue with less of the vice. Tippereth is the sun, Hesed is Jupiter, Geburah is Mars, on down the tree. If you're in those, you are invoking planetary energies, just in an even higher, more powerful. Well, that's the whole thing we're going to get into about with the fixed stars, about power and whether something is actually more powerful or not, as well as a bunch of other things. Whole bunch of topics to cover on the fixed stars. This is actually something that I'm thinking it's probably going to, maybe we even do a series on it. Tonight we'll just start on the first 4 royal stars, which I'm going to stop talking about everything else and get to in just a minute. But this, what we're talking about right now, is pertinent to what we're going to be talking about the royal stars and the fixed stars. He was just asking, someone was just asking, I can't remember who it was, about should you be invoking planetary energies before tree of life energies, angels around you. If you are I started personally with tree of life because of what I was just describing about how it is considered the same energy but at a higher vibrational frequency, purity level. And then I added the planetary angels after that, just to give it more power. Because again, that's that thing of more and more and more. I thought, okay, if I'm experiencing all of these changes and all of these results from this many angels, then let's see what happens when I add even more, when I take it to the next level and add the planetary archangels. And then you go, wait, what was the question again? One second. Oh, Pedro's asking a good question. Pedro says, so Hakma should be a pure form of the fixed stars, or is that higher? I guess that you could, think of it as Hakma is more like all of the stars when you're talking about the entirety of the astrological work, starting at the 12 archangels of the constellations, 36 deacons, 72 Shem operation, 15 of the fixed stars, all of that work. You see that all of the spheres all the way up to Benar planets, like Benar is Saturn. This is where that cosmological map, the one that I used to show y'all all the time, that has the Earth in the center and the planets going around it. And I said that this is the same diagram as the tree of life, just in a different form. And you show each of the planets, like you've got the Earth in the middle, then the level of the moon above that, and the level of Venus and Mercury and the sun, all the way up until Saturn being the final level. Beyond Saturn, Saturn wasn't the final level, it was the final planetary level. Once you go beyond Saturn, it had the firmament. This is what they're talking about in the Bible. And you see all that stuff in the book of Genesis about the firmament. The firmament is talking about the level or layer of the fixed stars, of your soul, of your aura. That is the final level of your aura or your energy system before you reach like the level where only pure divine mind exists. What was the question? What was I getting to? Hakma the stars. It'll come back to me. What was it? The fixed stars. Somebody give me a hint. Beyond the firmament is the Empyrean, the mind of God. Yes, yes. Who said that? Hold on one second. LVX said, could you extend the self-initiation ritual to the rest of the celestial lotus? Yes. You know how in the self-initiation ritual, you go around and ask the blessing of the 4 archangels of the elements on your cup of water before you drink it, and then visualize it filling you up? You absolutely could do that with the whole celestial lotus. Do that all the way up to the 72 angels of the Shem operation. You could go around and get all 72 of their blessings on it, as well as all the angels before. That's what I mean about this stuff as a formula, that once you get the basic formula down, you can apply it in bigger and bigger ways. That's exactly what I mean by that. You could do this, the self-initiation ritual with all the other levels, layers, all of that. So I know we were talking something to do with Hawkman. I can't quite recall what it was. Wait, what was the question? Oh, okay. Here we go. This is now we're getting in Alisic. Is that how you say it? Sorry if I'm mangling it. Says, hey Damien, what is the reason that Fomalhaut isn't counted among the fixed stars, but is counted among the royal stars? Well, the thing about most people when they think of the 15 fixed stars, those are the main ones of magic, but there are actually, those are the main ones of magic. The core of the fixed star practices are the 15, but the formal list of them, there are 26. So there's actually 26 fixed stars that we use in magic, some just more obscure even than the 15. But what was the question again? What was it? Who just asked me something? Why was it? Oh, Fomalhaut. Someone asked something about Fomalhaut. Oh, isn't counted among the fixed stars. So it is among the fixed stars, but it's not among the 15 most important or most famous fixed stars in ceremonial magic. And that is something else that we're going to get into too. And only the 15, the famous 15 fixed stars among the 26, only those 15 have angels associated with them. The other ones do not even have traditional angels associated with them. This ties into, like one of the things you'll notice, I've always recommended going to MRA's Patreon, to Ricardo Villanova. There are very, very few people out there talking about this kind of stuff today, talking about the fixed star stuff. He's one of the people doing it. We're going to talk about more of those people too, and those resources. That's one of the things. And this is, if you can kind of tell how excited I am about this, normally how I just kind of sit here and we just talk about what comes up as it comes up. I've actually been like writing like crazy again, just making, tons of notes about stuff I wanted to talk about with y'all tonight on this subject. That's what I mean about how it's going to be probably a series. But what I want to bring in my own personal stories. One of the things that I want to write out for y'all are something that you're not going to find in any books anywhere, because they are my own personal things that I discovered, through trial and error. One of those things will be the rituals you do that are associated with actually invoking the fixed stars, which can be very time consuming and complicated. But one of the ones we're going to cover tonight, if y'all want to take a screenshot of this, if you can see it, if not, I'll take a picture of it and post it just so you have, this is the ritual. This is the ritual based on the LBRP, or the lesser invoking, but that uses the 4 royal stars. But in addition to the royal stars, you know, just like with the LBRP, whenever I wrote about it in High Magic, I added 2 more. I added Metatron and Sandalphon. Well, whenever I wrote this one, I added 2 more. The 4 main royal stars, which we're going to be talking about tonight, but then I added also Spica above and Al Ghul below, just like I added Metatron above and Sandalphon below to the original ones, just because from my own personal experience of doing it over and over and over for years, that it worked far, far better. I got more results out of it in a quicker amount of time by doing that than I did using just a traditional form. I'm never going to just make some stuff up and throw it out there at you. Everything I'm telling you is stuff that I myself have done and I've gotten results from. See what y'all are talking about. Hold on one second. No, Coyote, that's a really good question, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. Coyote says, are the royal stars angels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel? There are people who have written that, and that's another thing we're going to talk about how there's not a lot of information about this out there. I'm going to give you I'm going to tell you all the books that I know about it, the teachers that are the teachers that are out there that are actually talking about this stuff, all that kind of thing. But let me read you something. So this is kind of the introduction. You know, this is just the introduction to us, to talking about the fixed angels and this ritual. Oh, who said that? Lauren Elizabeth. Lauren Elizabeth says, how do you work this into a stack, Damien? What precedes this, or is it a standalone ritual? Both, either and or. This is like what I would prescribe for if you just want to start using. But keep in mind, you need to be proficient at doing elemental and planetary work. You know, you need to have at least completely and absolutely mastered the hexagram rituals, so that you can do the solar invoking ritual of the hexagram or Tiphareth, whichever one you want to do, whichever one you want to call it. You can do that forward, backwards, inside out. You know, you have no doubt that it's working whenever you do it. You know that you're going to get a matter of results within days, if not hours sometimes, whenever you do this. You need to be, and this is the word, and I don't mean to say it just because it sounds esoteric or fancy or whatever, but you need to be an adept, someone who is adept at being able to feel and move energy. You know, like the guy that was tutoring me, one of the things, I've told y'all this before, he said was, I don't care if you get all the hand gestures right, if you know all the words, any of that. If you invoke something in this room and I don't feel something change, you don't pass to the next level. That's the level of proficient you need to be before going on to the fixed star work. So at that point, there's all different ways you can go off from there. If you want to, you can just go keep expanding on the shim operation. You know, when you invoke all the angels all the way through, the elementals, the tree of life, the 12 archangels of the zodiac, the 36 of the deacon, the 72 of the shim, and then throw in the 15 of the fixed stars if you want to in one last level. Just do that as a form of spiritual sustenance. If you do that daily, I mean, keep in mind, it's going to take you a good 3 hours, 3 to 3.5 hours to do that ritual. But if you do that daily for any amount of time, you're going to notice tremendous amounts of change in yourself very, very quickly. The longer you keep it up, the more pronounced they'll become. Oh, or you can invoke them one at a time. If you have one particular need and one of these angels, think about what these angels are. And this is one of the things I actually started talking once again, to the guy that first was like introducing me to some of this work, the guy who tutored me. I was talking to him earlier about this very same thing, because I wanted to get all the information and ideas and books and resources and everything else that I possibly could together before we started talking about this, because I want this to cover like everything about the fixed stars. That's why we're going to start with the 4 royal stars, and we'll tell you what those are and everything else. I'm probably going to go a little bit long tonight. I won't keep y'all forever, because we're going to do this. Good point, Pedro. Pedro says, let's hear the introduction. Right. Introduction. Humanity has always looked up to the nighttime sky in its quest to understand more about the world around us, as well as ourselves. Studying the stars is what led us to the practice of astrology, and much of what those who came before us learned has been preserved in the forms of folklore, mythology, and even biblical stories. Cultures all over the world and throughout time have sought secrets within celestial phenomena, and have devised practices based on the activities they see carried out in the heavens. Those who engaged in these practices and observations have usually been the priests and magicians of those cultures. And one thing that the earliest priests and magicians noted was that the fixed stars are unique in certain ways. The most notable being that they don't seem to move in the same way as the other stars. In fact, they don't seem to move at all, but they do. It's just that compared to everything else in the nighttime sky, they move infinitely slower. They move so slowly that their movement is very, very hard to detect, like trying to watch a tree grow. You won't find a great deal of information about the fixed stars. Working with them is considered to be a very advanced practice, usually only started after one has mastered both elemental and planetary working. In fact, I don't believe most people in the modern world are familiar with the alchemical aspects of the fixed stars. I personally only know of 3 books which I would recommend to anyone who wants to delve into the subject. The first and foremost would be Cornelius Agrippa's The 3 Books of Occult Philosophy. The second book is Christopher Warnock's Fixed Star Sign and Constellation Magic. And I made a note here. I wrote, read his bio on Amazon, Christopher Warnock. Go to Amazon and look up the book I just read, The Fixed Constellation and Star Magic, Christopher Warnock, Warnock. And you know how you can scroll down and read about the author? Read his biography. This is a guy who knows what he's talking about. It's a pretty impressive pedigree for this kind of information. So, he's had access to a lot of this stuff. But I made a note of that just because I think you'll find it a really interesting read. The third book, and by far the most rare, is The Book of Stars, The Secrets of Fixed Stars by James Simpson. It's the one I'd most recommend, but it's also the hardest to find. And to be honest with you, I don't know where you would find They don't have it on Amazon.com. It's by a man named James Simpson. James Simpson, and the book is The Book of Stars, The Secrets of Fixed Stars. If I'm not mistaken, it says something in it about how it might even be part of like an initiation course, meaning that it's information that was only given to people who were initiated into specific orders, or people who had access to the information. I can't remember. Maybe that's in there, maybe it's not. Like it might be something that was only passed in an order, because there are papers like that. You'll have papers that are supposed to only be handed down to someone who has reached at least certain grades or what have you. Who knows? Anyway, that one, let me see. One of the reasons that James Simpson says that so little is taught about the fixed stars is that those who do realize that the beneficial fixed stars do not help or work for everyone, although they have been unable to determine why this is so. So he says that a lot of people come to the conclusion that they don't work for everyone. Here's my own personal theory about that. I think if they don't work for you, there's all these different theories about this stuff. Like some people, for example, say that the fixed stars will only work for you if you are born with them in specific places in your birth chart, in your astrological chart, and that those are the only people that are going to be able to get any results from the fixed stars. That's not true. That's no more true than, when I was a kid, they used to say that, like when you get your first tarot deck, when you get your first tarot deck, it's always supposed to be given to you. You're never supposed to buy it. Superstition. If the only reason that this would not work for you, invoking the fixed stars, is if you had not yet become proficient enough at lower levels of magic. Like if you had not completely mastered forward and backwards, like we're talking about, the ability to do elemental and planetary magic, to invoke, to banish, all of that. The only reason that I think this wouldn't work for you, let me take that back. Not the only reason. Maybe you're also this just isn't your thing. That can be the case too. Not everything is for everybody. This just might not be a path that you're going to get the most development out of. That could be the case. But if you are proficient at doing the lower levels of magic, the elemental, the planetary, and even the zodiacal stuff, then they're going to work for you. That's just superstition, just like that old tarot story. But that book is absolutely amazing, and I don't know where to get it. I think someone asked, would I post a link to it? And I do not know where you get it from. Or are you asking me, or are you asking someone else? So everything that I'm talking about, whenever I'm talking about this fixed star stuff, none of this is original. Oh, wait, I had another note I wanted to read to you. Oh, my point about where all of this information comes from and how to find it. There's not a lot of stuff out there. So sources where I have learned more about this stuff is Christopher Warnock's book. And Christopher Warnock, this guy is kind of amazing. He's doing things like, I have a friend who, whenever I told him this was what I was going to be talking about tonight, he sent me a photo of himself holding a talisman of Al Ghul, the demon star, the one that is supposed to be the most malevolent star of all. Christopher Warnock actually makes these gorgeous talismans, metal. You know, I can't remember exactly how much they were, but I think they're like gold and silver on his website. I would, if you're looking for talismans like that, like the fixed star stuff, I would highly recommend checking out his website. You know, they're like I said, they're works of art. You're not going to find other, so they are a little pricey compared to other. You know, these are priced like jewelry. Like I think Bait Nurse was just saying they're like $400. So they are up there, but you're probably not going to run into very many people in this world who have one of these pieces. I'm not getting anything from this. I'm not selling anything here. I'm just telling you, when I saw them, I thought they looked amazing. I love them. I saw the Al Ghul. But all of this information that I'm giving, once again, it's not original to me. I'm just trying to take stuff that I've come across and simplify it, make it easier to understand, even more people access to it. Agrippa, Cornelius Agrippa. Like I said, I only know of 3 books on this subject that I would really recommend. Christopher Warnock's book, this James Simpson book, and Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. Those are the 3 that I would recommend, as well as I also, MRA, Ricardo Villanova, does a lot of information on fixed stars on his Patreon. Trying to think if there are anybody else out there I can think of that's putting this information out. And I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. But what Cornelius Agrippa said, I wrote down, Agrippa attributes all of his information on the fixed stars to Hermes Trismegistus, the book of Hermes on the 15 fixed stars. So that may be another one you want to check out. I personally have not seen the book of Hermes on the 15 fixed stars, but maybe look it up and see if it's a thing that's out there that you can buy off of Amazon or something. So the ritual, trying to decide. So I already held it up to the screen and showed you this. This is what it looks like written out. But what I also want to go into is, and I don't think we have time tonight because we're already over an hour, but I want to go into what each of these stars mean. We're going to digest all this stuff in little edible chunks. That's why we're starting with the four royal stars. We're not going to start with the 15. We're not going to start with the whole 26. We're going to start with the 4 royal stars. Just like you start with the 4 archangels of the elements when you're doing the lower level work. That way you don't get overloaded. You know, if you dumped on somebody all at once, the tree of life archangels and the astrological archangels, if you just dump that all on them at one time, they're going to say, I am never in a million years going to understand any of this. And they're going to give up, quit, and walk away. That's why you start them off with the 4 angels of the elements. We're going to follow the same formula, the same pattern. This is considered 3rd order work in magic. Like 1st order is really elemental stuff for the most part. 2nd order is mostly, you know, tree of life, planetary stuff. 3rd order is mostly stuff that falls into the categorization or classification of astrological. We're going to repeat the formula that we learned in the 1st order in order to master 3rd order material. Starting over from scratch in a whole new way. Starting over from scratch means we're starting with 4 angels again. These are not and keep in mind, or no, not angels. We're not going to be invoking angels. This is what I mean about some of the stuff that Ricardo Villanova puts out on his Patreon, he talks about um, not invoking the angels of the stars, but invoking the energy of the stars themselves. This is the same thing that the man who taught me about, who introduced me to a lot of this material said. He said, ultimately, you want to go beyond just the angels. You know, why use the angel when you can just invoke the energy of the star itself? And we're going to talk about how to do that as well. What was my point with this? Oh, so the thing about that is one of the four royal stars does not have an angel associated with it. Now, here's the thing. If you look up one of those books that I just recommended, it's going to have some information that's contradictory to what I'm telling you right now. Like he says right now, someone asked me earlier, someone asked on here earlier, are the four angels, Raphael, Gabriel, Michael, Uriel, are they the angels of the four royal stars? And I said, no. Well, James Simpson in his book says they are. I use a different set of angels. And I guess you could do it his way. But in the system that I'm using, and that's what all these things are, they're just systems. This is why you want to invoke the star itself instead of the angel. Like when you're talking about angels, people say, well, what, like when you're talking about angel names, those are names that somebody just gave them. That's somebody else's system. You don't need to chain yourself to feeding the egregore of somebody else's system. You can step outside that system and just invoke the star itself. Then you're not invoking anymore the metaphor. You know, most people think that like the angels or gods or whatever they are forget where I'm going with this. It doesn't matter. Whenever we come back, you know, if you want to see this right now, I'll read it to you real quick. Just just the version. Like if you're doing the lesser banishing or the lesser invoking of the pentagram, you do this the exact same way. Only difference being just to add a little more power to it, a little bit. This is for very minor work. You're going to inhale, fill the earth with light, and draw a white invoking pentagram. Inhale, fill the earth with light. Charge that white pentagram with Aura Rita. Inhale, fill the earth with light. Over that white pentagram, you're going to draw a flaming blue pentagram, overlapping them. Inhale, fill the earth with light. Thrust your fingers through the center of it and vibrate Ein, A-I-N. This is the source that even the tree itself descends from. This is the source of creation above the tree. You know, like I said, that ultimately, if you're going to free yourself from the wheel of samsara, from the cycle of incarnation, you have to transcend even the tree. And that sounds like such a huge undertaking in the beginning when we first start this practice. To think, you know, we think of like ascending the tree all the way to Kether. Like this is something so far beyond us. It's just, you know, that's like a huge accomplishment or something. In real life, once you get there, you realize that you've only just started and that the entire tree in itself is nothing but the very first step in a very, very long, long journey. Even someone who has, you know, completely transcended the tree and understands this work pretty much entirely still has a lot left to do. This is why, like, when people talk to me, people that do like tutoring sessions, when I tutor people, One of the things that I've been telling people is there is no reason for you to talk to me more than 1 year. Within 1 year's amount of time, possibly even less, I could have given the steps of this work to you, and you can know what they are. That doesn't mean you'll have mastered all of it or that you'll have done all of it, but you'll have everything you need. You'll have all of the information you need to do this if you apply yourself to it. It does not take more than 1 year to pass all of that information on. It does take more than 1 year to do it, to accomplish it. But that's the work. Cynthia Sherry says, what is Ein? A-I-N? It is, it's the creative energy that has no forms or patterns, or it's entirely pure of any imprints of any sort. Think of it as like a primal sea of energy that even God came from. Because that's what Kether is. Kether represents the mind of God. You know, in Gnosticism, how God of this world is not the source of creation. They call it the demiurge. Not that it's a bad thing, it's serving its purpose. But the demiurge, they say in the stories, had a mother. That the demiurge did not create itself. That primordial source of energy that gave birth to the demiurge, that would be Ein. Exactly, Shane. Exactly. Oh, so the names. So before me, Aldebaran. Aldebaran. The color of Aldebaran is orange. And we're going to get into all of what each of these stands for and everything else, because you need to know what you're invoking. Just a name doesn't give you much of anything. You have to know what Aldebaran, what kind of energy it's putting off. Behind me, Antares, Antares, and its color is crimson. On my right hand, Fomalhaut, Fomalhaut, and Fomalhaut is also crimson. On my left hand, wait, did I say on my right hand? Yeah, that's Fomalhaut. On my left hand, Regulus, Regulus, and the color is greenish yellow. And then if you want to add the two more, above me, Spica, S-P-I-C-A, and Spica is emerald green. And below me, Al Ghul, and Al Ghul is indigo. Now the placements for some of these, once again, if y'all will bear with me for just give me 15 more minutes, make it an even hour and a half tonight. Just bear with me for 15 minutes and I won't bore the hell out of you, and I'll pack a lot of information in as much as I can. Going back to personal experience for a minute, when people ask me how to invoke the angels from the Tree of Life, I tell you, I put below me, I had Sandalphon, I had Zaphkiel, and I had Kamael. Above me, I had Metatron, Raziel, and it's been so long. It's terrible because I don't actually invoke angels anymore. Raziel, Metatron. Oh, Zodkiel. I had those above me because I wanted those energies raining down on me. I had the angels that I chose to go below me, Zafkiel and Kamael. I had those below me because they were considered the archangels of what the ancients considered malevolent energies, Saturn and Mars. And I wanted those energies to be projected outwards around me towards lower vibrational energies, to protect me from lower vibrational energies. So symbolically, I put them below me. So it meant something. It wasn't just random placement, but it only meant something to me. That wasn't something I found in a book anywhere. Once again, following that formula, that's why I put Al Ghul below me. Al Ghul, let's see what I wrote about Al Ghul. Al Ghul is one of probably the more famous, popular ones, but also one of the ones at the very least has been written. Al Ghul is a primitive energy star. In the ancient Middle East, it was referred to as Ghul, Alghul, which means the Ghul or demon star. And it was regarded as an evil star or a star of misfortune. It preserves the body and protects against curses by reflecting the energy back upon its sender. Misfortune, brutality, sexual energy, and violence are also within this star's sphere of influence. So that was the kind of energy I wanted protecting me. I mean, it returns curses to their sender. People send you direct hate at you, it sends it back to them. The malevolence of Al Ghul is not towards you, it's directed outwards. Now, one of the things I was talking about with my tutor right before we came on here, because like I said, I was asking a ton of questions, just trying to get his thoughts on like different aspects. You know, everybody's got their own opinions, and even in these books, you might find some stuff that contradicts itself or contradicts each other, not itself, but maybe different people have different ideas on it. And I asked him, you know, do you, in your own personal experience, because in my personal experience, this hasn't necessarily been the case. Like some people describe it as the energy of the fixed stars is more powerful than the energy of the planets. That hasn't necessarily been what I've found to be true. Not that they're weaker, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that what it seemed like to me is that it's not necessarily about power. It's more about, how would you describe it? Specifics. Like it's more specific. Like it's not necessarily more powerful than a planetary energy. Because, like I said, a magician who is competent and capable and knows how to do this stuff is going to be able to use planetary energy to bring in tremendous amounts of change, sometimes in a matter of days. So it's not about power. That is going to vary from, that's entirely within the person doing the work. What the fixed stars are much more narrow focused, intense. INTENTS. Your intent. That's what I found. So whenever I was asking my tutor about it, he said the same thing. He said he didn't necessarily find them to be more powerful, but he found them to be more specific. See what y'all are talking about. It's not a demon. It's who said it's not a tumor? Who said that? I saw it a second ago. Michael. Michael. Bake Nurse says it's not a demon, and Michael says it's not a tumor. It's a reference to that horrendous Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s that always made me laugh. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, though. The Bake Nurse says Al Ghul mirrors, meaning, like a mirror reflects back. That's what Al Ghul does. It reflects back any negative, harmful, or hateful energy directed at you. Another thing, remind me, well, we still got 10 more minutes, so maybe I'll fit it in now. So what the fixed stars also are, like the energies, and this is one of the things you have to learn because you have to know what you're invoking. The fixed stars have the energies it's very much like at least one, but sometimes two of the planets combined. Or actually, Regulus is even three combined. Regulus is a combination of the sun with Jupiter and Mars. So this is what Regulus is the most important of the four royal stars. It's the most powerful of the four royal stars because all the rest are two planetary energies combined. Regulus is three: the sun, the moon, and Jupiter. So the sun is the energy of success and victory, whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish there. It's the energy that usually does things in a very balanced way. All that, it's like all of the energies on the tree go through Tiphareth. So it's like a general rule that if you don't know what energy to use Tiphareth, because it's the balance of all the energies from the tree of life, and it represents success and victory. So very, very powerful energy. Well, imagine that, like one of the most powerful energies on the tree. And then Mars represents power, pure, raw, angry, neither right nor wrong, just pure force. That's what Mars is. Aggression. So you've added that ingredient along with the sun energy. What's Jupiter? Jupiter is expansive. It's grow. So you've combined pure raw strength and aggression with this will to expand as much as it possibly can, to grow. Combining all of that creates one of the most powerful stars. So that's what Regulus is. And what I'm going to do in this book is write out the rituals. This is what I mean about how this is probably going to take a lot more time, is because I want to write out, if you want to invoke the full might of one of these things, how you would go about doing it. And since we're talking about Regulus now, I'll give you an example. First, you would do the entire greater invoking hexagram of the sun ritual around the room. And then you would go back on top of that and you would do the entire greater invoking hexagram of Mars. And then you would go back on top of that around all four directions and you would do the entire greater invocation of Jupiter. And then you would go around on top of that and you would do the entire greater supreme invoking pentagram of Leo. And then you would start invoking Regulus in all directions around you. And then direct it towards your goal. Doing that, you're talking about a ritual that's going to take probably, if you really put enough time and energy into doing it right, a good 3 hours. Ra's al Ghul. The big nurse I see says Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul also, Ra's al Ghul was the villain in the Christian Bale Batman show. That's where they got his name from, the Demon Star. And that's what he did. He turned the energy of bad guys back on them. That's kind of what his organization was known for. All right. I am out of water, so I'm going to stop for tonight. No, we are not, Brooke. Brooke says, are we invoking an angel from the book of the hidden name tonight? No, I am not at home, and I don't have access to any of my books other than the one I'm writing myself. Thank you, John. But we have a ton more stuff that we're going to go into about this. We're going to talk more about, we'll finish up talking about the 4 royal stars, and then from there we will expand into the 15. And then from the 15, we'll expand into the 26. I will put a screenshot up of this ritual. I'll take a picture of it and post it. So y'all can have it. Write it down yourself. I highly recommend you get a notebook of some sort and keep the stuff written down. All right. I'm going to shut up for the night, and I will talk to y'all in a few days. Thank you for being with me. Love you guys, and talk to you soon.